the YouTube come up soon.
Oh, I see it. Okay, so we are all set. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Election Law Committee. Welcome to our members. Hello, everybody. As I'm reading the following notice as required, it allows us to meet electronically, and as chair of the Election Law Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This particular meeting is a committee orientation meeting. There will be no votes taken. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform. And the public has the ability to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by Zoom, the Zoom platform, or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting does comply with House rules and RSA 91A, and anyone who has problems accessing this meeting, please call 271-3600 or email hcs@leg.state.nh.us. In the event at some point during this meeting, we learn that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and it will be rescheduled. At this time, I'm going to introduce Pam Smarling from the House Committee Research Office, who is on the meeting assisting us. We have some people in attendance from the Secretary of State's office who we will be hearing from. And I'd like to start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. And when each member states affirms that they're present for the meeting electronically, please state whether there is anyone else in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know. And if who's ever in the meeting with you has 4 legs, we're going to be giving them a quiz at the end to see how they listened. Natalie Wells Representative Wells has agreed to serve as clerk. Representative Wells, do you want to venture to take the role, or would you like me to do it?
It's fine if you'd like to. All right, do it.
Why you take the plunge?
My goodness.
You got the list, right?
I do.
All right, so we're going to go down this list. The list I believe we're going to operate on is by party, by rank. In regards to service terms, there is nothing personal about the order of this name. And if you have a Z, this may be your opportunity to be at the front of the line. So Representative Wells, why don't you take the roll?
Okay, first one is Representative Griffin.
Here, and there is no one with me today.
Okay, Representative McDonald.
I'm here and I'm alone.
Okay, Representative O'Brien. Prudhomme O'Brien.
Okay, keep going.
I saw him. Okay.
Kathy, you need to unmute yourself. Representative O'Brien, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, I see her. Okay.
No,
Okay, unmuted
you are.
now?
All
You're all
set.
set.
Great. Okay, I'm here with my daughter August, my cat, and my dog. Okay. Try to give them.
Okay, Representative Sweeney.
I am here and I am by myself.
Okay, Representative Hayward by phone. I don't know, is he able to unmute, do his *6 or?
You're unmuted.
Representative Hayward, did I just hear you? All right, why don't we keep going and hopefully that'll get worked out during the course of the meeting.
Okay, I see his name there.
Yeah, and he just, I'm sorry to interject. He has communicated with me by email and told me that he can hear fine and asked how he could be heard. And I gave him the *6 suggestion, and apparently it's not working, but that's all I know.
So why don't you give him the number 271-3600 to see if someone can help him log on. We
Sure.
need your assistance directly, or I would have you help him. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Representative Wells, why don't you continue?
Representative Mooney?
I'm present and alone.
Okay. Representative Terosian?
I'm here and I'm alone.
Okay. Representative Barry?
Here and alone.
Representative Groen? I don't know if I'm saying it right. No, he was here a minute ago. Representative Groen?
All right, moving on.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here and I'm alone.
There he
Oh,
is.
okay. Let's see, Representative Quayle.
I'm here and myself.
Okay, myself, I'm here. Representative Cody.
Here and alone.
Representative Ward.
Here with 2 family members in the house.
Okay. Representative Bergeron.
I'm present and there's no one in the room with me.
Okay. Representative Sandler.
Present, and there's no one in the room with me at present.
Okay. Representative Hammer.
I'm present and I have my dog.
Representative Lane.
I'm present and I am alone in the room.
Representative Freitas.
I am alone in the room, present and alone in my
Okay.
home.
Okay. Representative Hamblett.
Hey, I am here and my son is in another room and I'm in my home.
Okay. And Representative Muirhead.
Present and alone.
Okay, that's it.
thank you, Representative Wells. I want to welcome everybody to this meeting. What I'd like to do first is to do a little introduction of everybody to each other on the committee. I've had the privilege to serve with a number of you in prior terms and many of you on this committee. And I look forward to the upcoming session. I am a representative of Goffstown, New Hampshire. This is my 4th term, and this is my 2nd session as chair of this committee. In my 1st term, I was clerk of this committee, and just so you know that things don't always go like you planned, I have never asked in my committee assignments to be on election law. So here we are nonetheless. And I'm looking forward to the upcoming year. I want to thank Representative Wells for agreeing to be clerk. And I want to welcome Representative McDonald to the committee as my vice chair. We all have a pretty challenging year ahead of us with this meeting format. I know not everybody is happy with it. And I know for some people, they consider it to be a medical necessity. And we need to somehow accommodate all those views and needs as we go forward with committee meetings. As you can see, we are having this committee meeting remotely. So committee meetings will proceed with members being able to attend remotely. And we will talk about that a little bit more at the end of the meeting. I will point out that we have been given the dubious distinction of having the first public hearing. And after being asked to schedule 1 bill, I got the call and said, well, why don't you do 2 more? And we'll talk about how we've ended up being the first committee with the first 3 bills, because we're going to be doing that a week from now. So I hope you're all as excited to be on this committee as I am. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you as we try to get the bugs out of the system and have a meaningful session, participating as best we all can, given the circumstances. So having said that, I'm going to turn to my vice chair and ask him to introduce himself to the committee, and then I'm going to jump around the committee list here and ask you to introduce yourself. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm looking forward to working with you and everyone else on the committee. I was a little more fortunate than you. This was my first choice, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to serve on this committee. Clearly, we have a lot of work to do. It's an important function for the state, for the legislature, and I think we have some very important issues to deal with. I'm currently in my first term here in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, although I've been involved in the political process for quite a few years. I represent Rockingham County District 5, which is the town of Londonderry. Previous to becoming a member of the New Hampshire House, I served for 23 years in the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. I retired in June of 2019 as the senior welfare fraud investigator for the department. Prior to that, I was in the window manufacturing business for 19 years. Among other things I've done, I've been chairman of the New Hampshire Republican Party and also been Republican National Committee man for New Hampshire. And again, I look forward to working with you all and then dealing with the important issues that lie ahead.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. Representative Ward is with us this morning. Representative Ward, I've had the privilege of working with on this committee before, and Representative Ward brings a lot of knowledge to this process, both by virtue of himself and someone who he resides with. So good morning, Representative Ward. How are you?
Hi, Representative. Thank you for the nice remarks. I do listen to my wife from time to time. She knows more about this than I do. But I represent Ward 4 in Portsmouth. This is my 5th term, all of which have been on election law, which I enjoy very much. So glad to get the ball rolling once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mooney, welcome to election law.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Mr. Vice Chairman. My name is Maureen Mooney, and I represent and live in the town of Merrimack here in Hillsborough County. This is actually my 4th term. I served in the House from 2003 to 2008. During that time, I was on the Judiciary Committee, and in my last term, I was also on the Rules Committee and an assistant Republican leader. I want to particularly point out Representative David Cody, because he was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee when I served in my 3rd term back in 2007, 2008. And so it's great to be and serve on a committee with him as well. And so I look forward also to serving and getting to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mooney. Representative Bergeron also joins the Election Law Committee again and has a lot of experience that has been helpful in the past. Good morning, Representative Bergeron.
Good morning, Representative Griffin, and thank you. This is my 3rd term in the legislature. Last session, I was on election law. My 1st term, I served on municipal and county government, although that was 49 years ago. Prior to my retirement in 2015, I had spent 16 years as city clerk in Nashua. And for the 5 years prior to that, I was deputy clerk in Manchester, responsible for elections and licensing. So I've found election law to be a very comfortable fit for me, and I've enjoyed it very much. I look forward to the coming session as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Berry joins us in his 1st term here, I believe, at the State House. Good morning, Representative Berry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ross Berry. I represent Hillsborough 44, which is South Manchester and the town of Litchfield. I do a lot of different things, but I'm a landlord, small business owner, that sort of deal. I've worked in elections before, and I'm super excited for all the awesome things that we're going to do this year.
Thank you, Representative Berry. Representative Sandler, welcome back to election law. Good morning.
Unmute. There I am. Hi. Yeah, I'm Kat Sandler. I represent Stratford County District 21 which is a flaterial district. It includes Dover, Somersworth, and Rollinsford, as well as 2 wards in Dover, the 5th and 6th. I am a U.S. Army veteran and a retired attorney. Moved to New Hampshire, gosh, going on 6 years now, and very happy to be a member of the legislature and of this particular committee. It's a great place to work.
Thank you. Representative Prudhomme O'Brien is also returning to the Election Law Committee. I had the chance to sit next to her a few meetings last year. Good morning. How are you?
Morning. I hope everyone can hear me. And I'm happy to be on this committee again. This was my first choice. I was on this committee one time before. Prior to that, I was on the Labor Committee. And before that, in real life, I was a musical instrument maker for many years. I made piccolos and flutes. I then stayed home with my children and taught them at home until they went to high school. And I've continued to care for my family. I have my mother-in-law with us until she recently passed this last week. And at the age of 98, so that was a real gift to have her. I really am passionate about this issue. It started in 2016 for me when I ran again for the House of Representatives here in Derry. And we had some problems with our election, and they have been much better and have been improved upon, and things are much better in my community. But it was a real wake-up call for me and really made me see the importance of election integrity and how important that is for the community to see that elections are run well. Because they were the issues, that was the issue that I would say people in my community talked to me about the most and were most concerned about. So it's very important, and thank you all for serving as well.
Thank you. Representative Hammer returns and has been an early morning victim of the use of my new phone in response. I hope that somehow everything was spelled correctly. And I do want to let the committee know that I am expecting a call that I might have to take, at which point I will step out and ask my Vice Chair, Wayne McDonald, along with Pam Smarling's assistants, to take over. It should be a brief call. Representative Hammer, how are you this morning?
Hi, good morning. Good morning. I'm back on second term in election law. I represent Ward 10 in Manchester. I'm also ward clerk for Manchester. Just happy to be back.
Thank you. Representative Sweeney, good morning. I know I saw you somewhere.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. I'm excited to be back on election law. I had previously served in the House representing Rockingham 8, the town of Salem, from 2012 to 2016. Served those 2 terms on election law, and this is my first returning term to the House since then. And I'm excited to be on election law and work with all of you on the matters that affect our committee and that will be presented for. And I'm just really excited for the term. So thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Representative Hamblett. Welcome to election law.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I live in Portsmouth. This is my first term in the House, and I'm very excited to be on the Election Law Committee. I've been the moderator for Portsmouth Ward 3 for the past couple of terms. My district is a flotarial. I have Portsmouth Ward 3, Greenland, Newington, and Northampton, which has been fascinating getting to know lots of people in those towns. And let's see, I've been retired for 2 years and I worked for 29 years for the state, the last 19 of which were for the Child Support Office. I was a child support officer. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Groen, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm from Rochester, represent Stratford Ward or District 23, Wards 2 and 3 in Rochester. That first term in the House, I did serve 1 term in the Senate. I have the privilege of going from being simply senator to being honorable, and I appreciate that. I served on the ED&A Committee and Judiciary Committee in the Senate, as well as on JELCAR. And election law is my first choice here. I'm looking forward to serving with all of you.
Well, thanks for joining us. Representative Lane is on election law again this year. Good morning, Representative Lane. How are you?
Good morning, Madam Chairman. I'm fine. This is my second term, and I was on election law last term, and it was my first choice too, both times. And I'm looking forward to working on it again. So thank you.
In the interest of full disclosure, I think we have a lot of attorneys on this committee, whether actively practicing or retired. Will all the attorneys practicing or retired please raise their hand?
Can I see the whole picture? Can I do a whole picture?
So we've got 1, 2, 3 hands up there. So we are in dangerous territory. I just heard somebody ask about the whole picture. Pam, are you with us?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to take a break right now. You want to go through the options for screen in case we don't have everybody on the tile format, or do we have options?
Yes, you've got two options between speaker view and gallery view. And we definitely recommend gallery view so you can see all the different tiles. So,
and how would you do that?
On the upper right-hand side of my screen, there's a toggle or ability to go between speaker view and gallery view. Sometimes it says speaker view, or sometimes you see a grid with all the little, you know, like 9 squares.
Like a telephone pad, grid.
Like a telephone pad. So if you toggle between the two, you should be able to choose your gallery view.
And if you are on gallery view, the person speaking will be highlighted in some format. So your screen right now, because I am talking, my screen is showing a sort of yellowish green frame around it. So if someone is talking and you're not sure who it is, if you just do a soft eye look at the screen and look for that highlight, you'll be able to narrow in on who it is that's speaking. And of course, we've all learned that on the bottom left, you have the ability to stop the video and keep your microphone on. And you can also obviously click yourself back on. We appreciate that there might be things during committee meetings that you need to take care of. When we are physically in session, there are times that people have to get up and leave the room during discussion or public comment. And we need to sort of decide, I think maybe if you've got your camera on at that point, maybe we need to sort of figure out what works better as to whether or not leaving a blank screen on makes more sense so we know you're not there, or whether or not it makes more sense to just turn the video camera off. That may be a little bit of personal preference, but I think we'll sort of figure those things out as we go along. Does anybody else have any questions about the actual operation of the Zoom screen?
Yeah, the only other feature that is especially important is the raise hand feature. And I presume everybody knows how to raise their hand, but in case you just need a refresher, it's down at the bottom of the participants list. As an option.
Yeah.
And I know it's different on different systems, like if you're iPad or phone, it may differ, but that's important. And as while I'm talking, while I have the highlighted screen, I just want to say that I've been turning my video off during, once the meeting gets going. I'm not gone, I'm right here, but I am answering email and doing some other things, which I find distracting to, for you to see me moving around, answering the phone. That's the only reason I'm turning my video off. So certainly if you ask me something, I'll respond.
Great, thank you for that. All right, if members have questions about how to do the Zoom or what's going on or what they're seeing, I'm going to ask you to interrupt right away, especially on these first few meetings. Things are going to pop up. You're going to have questions, and it's better to get them resolved right away. And if you're having the problem, it probably means somebody else has, either at that moment or in the future. All right, we have a few more members.
Sorry, I just, the other thing is Representative Hayward, we've been emailing back and forth with him, but I don't know if he got the latest email because he's on his phone. It's been a challenge for him to listen, I think, and also look at his email. So Representative Hayward, if you could try signing off, just hanging up and dialing back in again. We're thinking maybe you just have a bad connection and you'll be able to unmute and mute yourself if you get a better connection. So, or, you know, I'm able to communicate with him by email. He says he can hear everything, but he just can't unmute himself.
All right, so if you can keep communicating with him, that would be great.
Okay.
All right, back to members. Representative Tarosian, good morning. We haven't had the opportunity to hear from you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, I'm Peter Tarosian. I represent Rockingham County 14, which is the town of Atkinson and Plastow. I just got elected to my third term. I'm proud to say I've dropped my list in the district for the third time and only time I've run with the most votes. I was on the Transportation Committee my last 2 terms, decided I wanted to make a change to election law, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But just a quick rundown on me. I'm a Coast Guard veteran. I'm not an attorney, so I guess I'm in the minority on this committee. A little bit of some of the things I've done in the past. I'm a retired airline pilot. I worked for 4 different airlines. I was on the board of directors of the Airline Pilot Association, which is the largest pilot union in the world. My last airline, I was president of the pilot union. Those were a couple of elected positions I had outside of politics, if you will. I was also in the aircraft charter business, where I was president and CEO of an aircraft charter and scheduled freight company that I actually founded. In my town, I was on the Conflict of Interest Board for 1 term. I'm currently finishing out my 6th year, my second 3-year term on the Municipal Budget Committee. I may run for another 3 years. If I do, I need to sign up, of course, on Thursday. In my time so far up here as a rep, I've filled in on many committees. Probably 75% of the committees I've filled in at one point or another. This time I decided to give election law a try. I believe we have important work to do. I certainly value, and we need to ensure that we have free, fair, honest, and secure elections. And I think we got our work cut out for us this term. And that's kind of why I wanted to get up on this committee. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Joining us on election law is Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to working on this committee. I was happy to be chosen. This is my 4th term, and I've been with Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs because I thought of elderly affair, nice thing now that I've retired from teaching. And I loved teaching. It's a good opportunity to listen and participate. And that's why these meetings, these committee meetings in person, I'm so looking forward to getting to that. I'm a selectman, been a selectman for 20 years, so I'm right on the front lines with election activities and election problems. So I'm really looking forward to working with the committee. Thank you for inviting me.
Representative Quayle. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Jim Quayle. I live in Ringe. I've lived here 20 years ago. I've lived here 20 years. I was a selectman from 2016 to 2019 and served as the chairman of that board for the last half of my term. I represent Chester 11, which consists of Rindge and Fitzwilliam. My professional background, academically, I studied physics for many, many years. And when I escaped graduate school, I went on to become a R&D engineer in defense and commercial industries for a number of years until I retired some years ago. The Election Law Committee was among my choices. I can't say first or second. I didn't really rank them in my own mind. And I'm really happy to be on this committee. I think it's important work and I'm looking forward to contributing to it. And it's a pleasure to meet you all. And I'm looking forward to when we get a chance to meet in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Wells, we put you right into the fire with roll call a little earlier this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. I have the flotarial of Merrimack 25, which is Andover, Danbury, Salisbury, Warner, and Webster. This is my second term here for election law. The great Representative Barbara Griffin, and which was in 2016 and 18. And I'm a retired business person, and I've been up here now for 20 years and just love it. And election law is very important to our state, and this is why I signed up again for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Muirhead.
Thank you. I represent Lyme and Hanover. This is my first term. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a teacher, and very much looking forward to learning about the committee's work. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We all look forward to working with you and each other. The last committee member here that I believe we can hear from, because Representative Hayward, as far as Representative Hayward is still, I don't believe, with us, is Representative Cody. I have in my mind saved the best for last. I have had the privilege of serving with Representative Cody now every term in some capacity on this committee. And I still remember the first time he introduced himself as to the service he has done for the state in this role. So I consider it a privilege to be back with him. Good morning, Representative Cody.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the kind words. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am David Cody. I am from Nashua. I represent Nashua Ward 4, and this is my 20th term in the legislature, and I'm delighted to serve with all of you. In reference to Representative Mooney, I'm delighted she finally took my advice and decided to come back again after a period of time. And I look forward to serving with her again. And Representative Sweeney, who's a former member of this committee. Thank you very much. Look forward to serving with all of you, of course.
Thank you, everybody.
Madam Chairman, I just have a recent word from Representative Hayward. He's going to remain as he is. He tried hanging up and coming back in one time and still has the same problem. So he's okay with just listening, and hopefully we can come up with a better solution for the hearings on Friday, clearly, but he's going to stay this way.
All right. So good morning, Representative Hayward. We're glad you can join us. We're going to be hearing a presentation. So the committee knows I do expect there to be some screenshots. So we're going to get some practice in how to do that, because I need to tell you it annoys me terribly to have these screenshots of the committee and of the paperwork and not be able to see the committee. So we're going to see how that works. And in that regards, do we have, I see that Deputy Secretary Scanlon is with us. Generally, in the past, what we have done for orientation for election law is hear from the Secretary of State's office. Election is a little bit different from other committees. First of all, law is in our title, election law. And the state has a division of operations that is essentially devoted to the administration of elections. The state, through the Secretary of State's office, administers its elections, and it administers its elections entirely by law, not by rule. You heard a reference of, I think Representative Groen discussed what he was in the Senate. He was on GELCAR. Most agencies operate by rules. The elections in this state are governed by statute. And so when we go to take a look at the bills for next week, you're going to see some bills that go on for pages and pages and pages. And that's because they are actually dealing with the law as it is currently codified. And the changes are made to that law in specific form by word, so that what this committee decides to bring forward to the body and what the body passes goes directly into law and is not subject to rulemaking by the administrative agency. So in that regards, we asked the Secretary of State's office to join us to sort of bring us up to date. Every 2 years when we reassemble, it is after a general election. I am hoping that we're going to be able to hear a little bit about what the numbers were for our election this past fall in regards to participation. And I'm also hoping that we're going to hear a little bit about what laws govern our operation here in the state, because of course there are federal laws that govern our general elections as compared to our municipal elections, which we'll be dealing with directly next week. Pam, I see that
Dave Scanlon and Secretary of State Gardner both appear to be in separate links.
All right, so I'm going to try and promote to a panelist, both gentlemen from the Secretary of State, Secretary Gardner and Deputy Secretary Scanlon, but I can't
The
find
bottom of the list, W. Gardner.
Oh, okay.
The other handy thing to do in this situation actually is if somebody in the attendees raises their hand, they pop to the top of the list. And so you can see that they're alphabetical by their first names, which is, sometimes you know their first names, but it's easiest, ask them to raise their hand, pop to the top of the list, then you can find them.
All right, and they will join my panelist list in alphabetical order, apparently. Is that how this works?
Alphabetical, oh, I don't know how they join the
Because
panel.
I'm on my screen, Deputy Scanlon is showing up towards the top and Secretary Gardner is now at the bottom. Okay, I mean, which is fine. I just want to be able to find them. And because we just added them, they have gone to the end of my tiles. If committee members will note, we now have more panelists than tiles. So if you go to the middle of your screen on, the side of your panel on the right or left, you will see a 1 of 2 if you're on the first page. And if you click it, you will go to 2 of 2. The tiles will automatically fill, so there will be overlap, but I can see Deputy Scanlon and Secretary Gardner online. Welcome to the meeting. Deputy Scanlon, I'm speaking directly to you because on my screen it appears that Secretary Gardner is muted. So I'm not sure what's happening there. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you. And Secretary Gardner is with us. We're in the same office, but in different rooms. And you need my assistance in getting his picture up in his tile and also unmuted. So I'll be happy to do that in just a second. Before we get started, I want to say it's great to see a lot of very familiar faces on the committee, and look forward to working with those members that we've worked with in the past, and also the new ones that are also on the committee. We look forward to meeting you, hopefully in person in the not too distant future, but in the meantime, through this format. Before we get into our presentation, just a couple of housekeeping things. We like to be a resource for the committee and the members of the committee to the extent that we're able to. We do have some publications that the veteran members of the committee have, and we'll certainly get these to the newer members. It would be helpful if you could send us an email with your mailing address, and we're happy to send these materials to you. Otherwise, you can wait until we see you in person, or you can visit the office and we can hand them over. But we have the election law book, which has all of the pertinent laws related to elections and most of the statutes that you'll be dealing with the legislation that you'll be taking up this session. We also have state constitutions that are available. This is also a very important document for the work that you do. We have an election procedure manual that, because of the work you do, keeps getting thicker and thicker every year. And the last session, because of the COVID situation, was no exception to that. But this is the Bible for local election officials, and it is a product of the work that you do. And after the second session of the biennium prior to the elections, we put all of the updates related to the election laws in this booklet. And then these are mailed to every election official in the state of New Hampshire. And then the last helpful publication you'll find is the political calendar. This is simply a 2-year calendar, but it has all of the important deadlines and the related statutes that accompany those deadlines related to anything with elections. So these would be dates for filing for office, when the actual primaries are held, when the supervisors of the checklist have to meet. The only information that is a little lacking in here are dates related to Senate Bill 2 elections. And the reason for that is there's flexibility in those dates at the local level. And so it's really difficult for us to just put that as a calendar date in this publication. But otherwise, this is a really helpful document to have that you should be aware of. So with that, I'm just going to jump over to the other office and help Bill get onto his screen. And so just give me
Deputy Scanlon, before you go, you mentioned emailing the office. Is there an email address if people need to be sent the material you just saw because they don't have it?
Yeah, probably the best thing is just email me directly. And my email address, is david.scanlon, and that's SCANLAN @sos.nh.gov.
Thank you. You also mentioned that members could come by to pick up the material directly if they so desired. If they wanted to come and do that, who should they call?
They can just call the Secretary of State's office, and the main number here is 271-3242. And let them know that you're a representative on the Election Law Committee. The building at the moment is not open, and so entry is restricted, but if they won't let you in the building, to come up to the office, room 204 of the State House, we're happy to bring the materials down and meet you at the side entrance.
If you manage to get into the building, room 204 is essentially at the end of the ramp, which enters into the anteroom of Representatives Hall. Finally, just based on what you said, you referenced SB2 elections in the political calendar. If you're from an SB2 town community, you know what that means. But does that SB2 have any relation to the SB2 that we have on our calendar for hearing next week?
It does not.
Okay.
The SB2 that I'm referring to was a Senate bill that passed back in the mid-90s that created the official ballot form of town meeting. And that moniker stuck. And here we are a couple decades later, and that activity, that form of town meeting is still referred to as Senate Bill 2.
So we have a Senate Bill 2 that could affect Senate Bill 2.
You have Senate Bill 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to look at it more closely, but Senate Bill 2 that is currently before you I believe is designed to help towns get through the town meeting
The
coming up.
town meeting as compared to the SB2.
Yeah, with concerns related to COVID. So I'm sure that Senate Bill 2 is a portion of that.
All right, well, we'll be hearing more about that later. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Deputy Scanlon before we switch tables here in the Secretary's office?
Just allow me a
Quick one.
Peter, Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think we all understand that the building is closed, but if we called your office, could we make an appointment to come up when we come up to pick up that material?
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
Happy to escort you up.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not going anywhere, but I see Representative Hammer has her hand raised.
Yes, I had a question. I had emailed the Secretary of State's email. I have a constituent who wanted to know what voting machine were used, because he was afraid that if we were using a certain type, it wasn't keeping track of all the correct votes.
That is a frequently asked question after the last election, and concerns that were raised with voting equipment that is manufactured by a company called Dominion. And
yes.
the optical scan counting device that is used in New Hampshire has been used for probably at least 25 years now. They're rapidly approaching the end of their functional life, but they are still in use as they are in use in Vermont and Connecticut and other places in New England. Those Dominion, the company that has the concerns raised about it, owns the intellectual property of the AccuVote machine that is used in New Hampshire. Even though it had nothing to do with the manufacturing of the machine, the firmware that is in the machine, which is a form of software, was not created by Dominion. And the memory cards that are used are not programmed by Dominion, but they're programmed by a local vendor known as LHS Associates. So the short answer to your question is no, those are not the machines that where the issues were raised related to Dominion equipment and software. They've actually been a really good workhorse over the decades. Occasionally, we have some counts that don't make sense, but 99.9% of the time, as long as the voter accurately marks the ballot according to the instructions, those devices will count those ballots properly.
Thank you. I did send him an email and assured him that New Hampshire's Secretary of State's office is accurate and we are right on board. So thank you.
You're welcome. So give me 30 seconds and I'll get Secretary Gardner on the show here. You're all set.
I don't know what that background is.
Yeah, that's the archives.
Okay.
But you're all set online.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you, the veteran members and the new members. Your committee is a very special committee in the legislature, and it has been over all the years. As Chair Griffin mentioned earlier, there are no rules in this office, and there's a very important reason for that. Because when it comes to the elections really belong to the people, and it should be elected representatives of the people who make the decisions about how their elections are going to be conducted. So unlike how some of you have seen on television and I've read of late where secretaries of state have made this decision or that kind of a decision, in this state, it's not like that. And here's an example. There are 18 articles in the New Hampshire Constitution that have the Secretary of State in those articles. There are 22 in the Constitution that have governor in the article. There's no other state department like that. And there's only two others that are even mentioned in the Constitution, the state treasurer and the attorney general. But for both of those offices, there are not additional articles mandating that they do certain things. And so this, over the years, there've been some exemplary chairs of this committee, and I can't think of any that wasn't. It's of late, it's not been as easy to deal with the committee because within the last decade or so, there have been outside groups that were never involved before in elections. Elections committee didn't have lobbyists in there being paid to try to get certain election-related legislation either passed or defeated. And that changed about 10 years ago, and it has changed to some degree the committee. But this office works closely with the committee, and it's important that the individuals who create the rules for the elections are directly accountable to the people, like you all are in the districts that you represent. So I'm gonna ask Dave, I'm gonna start with what happened just a few months ago and where New Hampshire stands compared to the rest of the states. So I don't know how this screen is gonna come up. Dave, are you gonna actually do that?
Yeah, okay, Madam Chair, if I could just ask Pam Smarling if she could set it up so I can share the screen.
It's all set up for that, Dave. You should be able to.
Okay, so let me see if I can. Can everyone see that?
I'm not getting anything.
No.
Okay, let's see what. You can see that, right?
No.
I can't.
You can't see it? Okay, here we go. I think I've. Let's try this.
Now looks good.
Okay. I just noticed what's behind me. I'm actually in a room in the State House on the second floor. But I think this might have been done by the Senate when what the background is. And I'm the only one in this room. So this particular chart, you can see to the far right, 2020, New Hampshire is highlighted in yellow. And again, in this presidential election, we had the third highest turnout in the country. And it's based on the number of votes that the highest office vote, and it's based on voting age population. And the reason that it's based on that is because it's the only way that you can go back 50, 60, 80 years to get a true comparison of the number of people, the percentages that were voting, because of late, the last 3 or 4 elections, different people have come up with different denominators, but those don't allow you to go back to get a historical look. So even though we've been told that this election, it's been the highest in 100 years, or not exactly the case. So you can see in this chart, we go back in this one to 1996, because that was the first presidential election that New Hampshire had election day registration at the polling place. And in sort of pinkish color is the state of Oregon. And the reason that that is highlighted is because in 1996, Oregon opted to get rid of its election day registration at the polls and decided to have everyone sent a ballot who was a registered voter for the election. They do not have any polling places in Oregon. Everyone gets a ballot by mail as long as that person's a registered voter, and they have multiple days and multiple locations to return that ballot. So in this, from 96 to 2020, every one of those presidential elections, Oregon did that. Their turnout has been lower than New Hampshire. Now, the second chart that sort of looks like this goes back to 1976. That was the year I became Secretary of State, through 1992. And you will see that Oregon had turnouts higher in every one of those presidential elections than New Hampshire. And between 92 and 96, the Secretary of State of Oregon tried to convince me to go to all mail voting, because he said that if we did it on the East Coast, they were going to do it on the West Coast, and that we would solve the voting problem in the country, because this would make it so that everybody will vote. And you can see, so the first 5 presidential elections that are included here, where New Hampshire was in the yellow, and the one time that we were below the country was in 1984. And we learned a lesson from that election, because on the ballot, actually there were more than one page, there were 13 constitutional amendment questions. And in many of the cities, the ones that had lever voting machines, they only had 10 voting machines per ward. So those of you from Manchester, think about this. There were 10 places where you could vote. Whereas now when you go into your polling place in Manchester, there's 60 or even 75 booths that you can vote in. So that's how many people can vote at one time. In 1984, there were only 10. And with the questions, people were in the booth longer because they had a page and a half that had these 13 questions. And that was the only time. So even though all day long, the news reports were that it was massive turnout in New Hampshire, no one had seen anything like this. There were lines everywhere in the state, and it turned out to be the lowest of our turnouts. And we learned from that, and the legislature dealt with that. You can't have more than 3 questions at a time. So that's the green line on the right, the one you're looking at, that's sort of the demarcation. When we then went to 96, you see the complete reverse, that New Hampshire in 96 went ahead of Oregon, and we have been ahead of Oregon in every election since. And when you read national stories, you will often see that Oregon is considered by the academic experts that that's the best place in the country, because that's the least effort a voter has to make to be able to vote. And the states should be like Oregon, because that is the way to do it. And this factual data shows factually what had happened. So this time we were, you can see the states that have been above us: Minnesota and Maine, and Wisconsin. So if you go back to the last 5, you'll see Wisconsin was in 3rd. We were 4th in 2004, and then we've been 3rd. But those are the 4 states. And so what is the difference? Well, New Hampshire does not have a durational residency requirement. Wisconsin has a 28-day residence requirement. Minnesota has 30 days in its constitution. But it also has in its statutes 20 days in a precinct, or what they call out there the place you actually vote. And so that's the difference between Minnesota and Wisconsin and New Hampshire. And the difference between Maine and New Hampshire, and you see Maine had been just barely above us, and then they've been below us back in 12. Maine is not exempt from the National Voter Registration Act like New Hampshire is, because Maine did not qualify. To qualify to be exempt, you had to have election day registration at the polling place. And Maine didn't have that. They had election day registration, but they didn't have it statewide at the polling place. You could register, but you have to go to the clerk's office or some other place to register on election day and then go to vote. So there are some other differences, but those are the considerable ones. So you can see in these charts, you can pull out any state you want and do your own coloring in, whether the state has been on a trajectory of going higher, or whether the state has been on a trajectory of going lower over the years. And in blue, you can see where the country is as a whole. And so in this chart, you can see, and then if you go back to the previous chart, Dave, can you do that? Okay, the previous chart you can see, and now, so go back prior to 76, and 72 it's just not here, but it's available. You can come up if you want to come up and look at it. It's not really much different. But look at the turnout for the country. In 52, it was 63, using the same denominators, because that's important, using the same denominators that we have used all these years. And you can't go back that early unless you use voting age population, which is a Census Bureau number, and highest vote, because for highest office. And I happen to know the person in the 70s who worked for Congressional Quarterly, who was given over a year to just travel to the states in the country that had not provided the information back in the 50s and the 60s. Some states didn't get all the kind of statistics that others did. And so in order to have it for the country, he was given the opportunity to do that. And when he finished it, he sent it up to me. That's how I have it. And then it was published by the Congressional Research Service. So these compilations come from those statistics. In this, if you had looked at the turnout for the country in this election based on this, it was 61.4%. So look back at 52, it was 63.8, 56, 60, 64, and 68. So for New Hampshire, we were 72.2 this time, compared to 61.4 for the country. So if you look at New Hampshire compared to the country, In 52, we were 78.2, 75.2, 78.7, 72.4. So our turnout in this election was the highest since 1964, because we had 72.2, and in 64, we had 72.4. So that's how our numbers compare to nationally. Now, when you think about this, I compared the difference between Minnesota, Wisconsin, Maine, and New Hampshire. What is the difference between New Hampshire then and the country? So 3 of those presidential elections in the 50s and 60s had higher turnouts than the country. And how did people vote? In those 5 presidential elections in New Hampshire, you had to be a resident of the state for 6 months. Town and city clerks could not do voter registration. That didn't come until the 70s. Back in those 2 decades, you could register twice a year. That's all the law required. 2 days. And they were around the time of the election. Now, the supervisors could do it more if they wanted to, but that's all that was required in the law. And you had to pay a poll tax in order to be able to vote in these 5 presidential elections. So by looking at it, you can see that the will of those who could vote existed because they did. I mean, there were a lot of people who could have voted during those 5 presidential elections, but weren't allowed to because of provisions in their states. And yet their numbers as part of the voting age population were included. So even though a substantial number of the population was not able to vote, the voting age population compared to the turnout for highest office was for 3 of them out of the 5, and were more than we have had since, and the country as a whole has had since, with all the changes that have taken place since those 2 decades. And that's certainly a challenge, how to bring back the will of the people in this country who can vote to vote. And so that's where we are. And then after our election, not quite 3 weeks after, but the Granite State poll was conducted at the university. And they did this survey before the presidential primary and after the presidential primary. And they did it again in November, before the general election and after the general election. Very substantial statistics came out of this that were very similar, both for the presidential primary and for the past November election. And I'm only going to bring one of them. There's others like accuracy, how the people of New Hampshire feel about their vote. Is it actually counted the way they cast? And extremely high compared to the rest of the country. And this question, ease of voting, was asked back in the winter and again in November. And it's remarkable that I think it's cutting off but those who voted by absentee, this was a poll, if you had looked at the first page, over 1,900 were polled about this. And they were asked before the election what they thought, how easy they thought it was going to be, and how accurate, and then after the election. And these are the numbers after, they're higher than before. They're really high. So those who voted by absentee ballot, and this time we had about 31% of the ballots were absentee in the November election. And it came to about 262,000 out of 814,000 who voted. Those who voted absentee, if you add very easy, 85% found it to be very easy, and 13% found it to be somewhat easy. That's 98%. And voting in person, 90% found it to be very easy, and 9% found it to be somewhat easy. It's actually a little over 99%. Now that is a reflection of the 814,000 people that actually cast ballots, whether by absentee or at the polling place. And it's pretty remarkable that any poll that's in the 90 percentile is considered suspect by those who did it. But this has not only been the case in November, but it was also the case in the presidential primary. And this question has been asked by the Granite State poll in previous years, as has the question about how accurate the people of this state. So that's what happened in November. It was different because of the pandemic, and there was a lot of concern how it would even take place because of all the anxiety that existed. But that's what we can report to you statistic-wise. A poll, some people have a lot of faith in polls, some people have very little faith, but the statistics are factual. And so this session, good luck. You know, we're here. You have anything that any question that you might have, hopefully this building will be open in a few months, but you can come in. You have to just let us know so that security will let you come in the morning. The legislation at the end of the session last year, the only legislation regarding election laws that passed was a legislation that was bipartisan in nature, where both parties had leaders of the House and Senate come together, and anything else ended up not getting through. And what did get through was a big help at the local level and allowed New Hampshire to have the numbers that we had. 814,000 is, and the numbers now on the checklist, we're virtually, we're in the 90+ percentile of people that can vote being on the checklist. And our voting age, population includes people who aren't even eligible to vote. It includes people in New Hampshire who are incarcerated felons. They're part of the voting age population, but they can't vote. And that's part of the difference, Maine and New Hampshire. Maine allows felons who are incarcerated to vote. So 4 years ago, we were in second place in the country when you when the denominator was the voting eligible population. We were second and Maine was third. In that same election, based on voting age, Maine was first and we were third, because when you allow more people to be able to vote, like Maine, when the denominator is voting age, they do better. And that's not, and in some states where they have a higher percentage than we do of people living in the state but are not eligible to vote because they're not US citizens. That's a factor as well. But why we use voting age is because it is the only way you can have an historical perspective. And you don't read that in the national media. You don't see this type of historical perspective because for some reason, they don't want to use it. And in the last 3 elections, there are groups out there that have come up with different denominators and they show sort of different rankings. But you can't go back using those new type of denominators to get a true perspective from the past. So that's all that I have at this point. I'll get to meet those of you who are freshmen, and congratulations. A lot of you, this was your first choice, and it's such an important part of our government. It's the most important part because it's the one part that affects everybody, every person who has the right under our Constitution and our laws to vote. What you do, you provide that for them. And it's the one thing that a lot of people in this country, that's all, the only part that they ever play as part of their government is the voting process. And we can be proud of the people of this state. And when you look at those where, you know, the participation level.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. It was a pleasure to get that update on the data that has been done in regards to the machine. And I know you've always been very accessible to committee members, and I know you will be over the next 2 years. So thank you. And one of these days I might have 1/10 of your ability to remember numbers from free recall, because it always astounds me. I don't know how you did it, but thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might just talk a little bit about the last election, because as you all know, it was unprecedented, you know, having to deal with a pandemic crisis, something that every state in the country had to do. But, you know, this all started about a year ago. And very quickly, we realized that it was going to take a major effort to be able to conduct an election safely, you know, making sure that everybody, all the voters had an opportunity to exercise their right to vote safely. And so, you know, we started early on communicating with local election officials. Secretary Gardner put together a select committee on emergency election support. You were a member of that from the legislature, along with Senator Sherman and some other individuals that were familiar with New Hampshire elections, to take a look at the federal funds that were being made available to support the elections in New Hampshire and to help determine on how those funds should be effectively spent. And after all of the great work on that committee, input from local election officials, New Hampshire did end up spending about $1 million on PPE, personal protective equipment, that was distributed to all of the polling places around New Hampshire. And, you know, the input that we heard from voters and election officials was that whether it was the state primary or the general election, generally the voters felt safe going to the polling place. And approximately 70% of the voters did do just that in both the primary and the general election. Additionally, we ended up giving about in excess of $2.6 million directly to the cities and towns in support of their efforts in conducting the election. Those monies were based on the number of absentee ballots that were sent out by the municipal clerks and the costs that were associated with that. With some of the federal funds, we hired an accounting firm that worked with the federal government, the Election Assistance Commission, to make sure that we could come up with basically a one-size-fits-all formula based on absentee ballots as a simple method to reimburse cities and towns for the costs that they incurred. And so that was also a successful program. Fortunately, they have some PPE left that that they're able to use in the municipal elections, and hopefully that'll get us through this year and beyond the COVID the crisis altogether. We utilize this format, Zoom, to communicate with local election officials. It turned out to be an incredible tool, something that I'm sure that we will continue to use for communication and training well beyond the pandemic that we're dealing with at the moment. It was not unusual for us to have a couple hundred plus participants on those Zoom calls. And it was amazing the way that we were able to communicate, get the word out. And we saw through those communications, comments and input from local election officials that bordered on panic in the early days to just a really calm sense as we approached the elections, where they all felt prepared and ready for the election. And that was a very rewarding thing to see, and a big relief on our end too, to see that get pulled off the way that it did. Jumping over to an area that some of you are familiar with, but you probably have questions about, you'll hear more about, and that is the HAVA component of the Secretary of State's office, our elections division. HAVA stands for the Help America Vote Act. And back in 2002, the federal government passed some requirements through a federal act that required every state in the country to create a statewide centralized voter database, something that you will hear commonly referred to as ElectionNet, where all of the registered voters in the state of New Hampshire are put input into that system along with their personal data. Part of the Help America Vote Act required that we provide accessible voting equipment in every polling place in the state of New Hampshire. And we are on the second generation of those devices now. Recently in the last election, we made some significant upgrades to the ability for individuals who are blind to be able to vote by absentee at home using their computer as part of that process. The federal government gave us, well, at the time it was about $17 million. We spent the money that was required to meet the requirements, the mandates of the Help America Vote Act, again, creating the database and providing the accessible voting equipment. But we have probably $9 million still in that account where we're using the interest basically to continue to pay for the funds that are required from that federal mandate. So at this point, we have kept New Hampshire from having to dip into its general fund to pay for something that is required by the feds. And we hope to continue that well into the future so that these programs are paid for by federal money and not state money. There's also about $3 million that was put into that fund a couple of years ago. If you remember, before COVID, the big concern and crises in the election arena was cybersecurity and making sure that our election systems are safe and secure, that we could reduce the risks of being hacked, especially by foreign entities. And New Hampshire has done quite a bit in that regard as well. You don't hear about it much now because COVID has taken the screen front and center, but we have done quite a bit to safeguard our database systems related to elections, and also the the accessible voting equipment and the optical scan counting equipment that we currently use in the polling places on election day. So, we can answer more questions in that regard as you have public hearings and these topics come up. I looked at the number of bills that are already assigned to your committee, and I see it's up to 50 already. So we're going to be seeing a lot of each other. And Madam Chair, I don't know if you have any questions that you want to ask now, or whether you just prefer that we wait until the hearings, but we're available.
Thank you. I'll ask, do committee members have any questions? I do want to say that we do have a hard stop coming up. Pam Smarling has another meeting she has to do at 1 o'clock, and I think it would be nice to let her be able to log on early and have some lunch. So I'm more than happy to take questions, but keep in mind, we're going to have lots of opportunity. I do see a question. This is good practice. So Representative Terosian, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Scanlon, for taking the question. Earlier, Dominion was brought up in the conversation, and everybody's heard of the stories of some problems with them and those machines being connected to the internet for various reasons. It's my understanding that the machines we're using are Diebold. You did mention earlier that that company or that system is now owned by Dominion. Are any of our towns or municipalities connecting those machines to the internet at all with the data, the vote count in the machine at any time?
No, the answer is no. All of the machines that are used in New Hampshire are standalone devices. And at the end of the night, there is a results tape that is printed out. If it is a community that uses multiple devices, they printed a results tape out for each device, and then they physically add those together to reach a total. The modems that can be in those machines have been used for the machines that are in service in New Hampshire. And in addition to that, all of the external ports on those devices have also been disabled. So the only cord that comes out of those machines that can be plugged into anything is the power cord. And so that's the state of the machines that we use here. Prior to their use in any given election, there is a memory card that is provided by the vendor that services and maintains those devices that is tested prior to the election to make sure that the machine is counting votes properly. And then that card is left in the machine. The cards are sealed with a numbered seal. The machines themselves are kept secure. They're kept in a bag when they're not in use. All of the openings on those devices have numbered seals on them, and every municipal clerk is responsible and required by statute to keep a log of those seals and make a notation in the log every time those seals are broken, and then the number of the new seal that is placed on it. So there's a lot of security that surrounds those devices. It's not to say that those machines could not be hacked somehow, because any electronic device we recognize can be, but the way that they are maintained, kept secure, with logs kept of them, dramatically reduces the risk of something nefarious occurring. And for something major to happen in New Hampshire would require a significant conspiracy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I am sure that we'll be hearing a lot about that as we go on this year. Representative Lane.
Thank you. I recall last year going to a couple different, for the voting machines, that people came in and showed the voting machines because there was some discussion about because as you mentioned, our voting machines are kind of getting long in the tooth. So I was just curious what you expect to see about that, and will we be hearing about that more, or what the status of that is?
We will certainly be hearing about that more. Some of those initiatives were put on the back burner because of the COVID crisis and everything that we were dealing with. The issue with the vendors that showed up was that we're having difficulty finding just a single standalone counting device that will count ballots. And the vendors that came to the sessions that we had where we were testing them out have they want to sell a package. So it's not only the machine that counts the ballots, but they want to sell their software program to go along with it that designs the ballots and it's a lot more bells and whistles than we actually need. That's not to say that we may not end up with one of those entities in the future. It's just we want to make sure that we get what makes sense for New Hampshire. The other thing that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, this session is going to be the e-poll books and where that stands. And that is moving along, but slowly. There have been some localities in New Hampshire that have tested those devices, and we've been able to see what the benefits are that work well, but we've also been able to see where the flaws are. And so that'll be part of the discussion this year. And the other thing that we did recently as a result of a bill that was passed through the Senate that required us to test high-speed scanners for auditing purposes after the general election, which we did. There's some interesting results. I mean, there's some, the technology is really improving, and they were able to go through a town's ballots very quickly with results that matched up closely with what the counts were on election day. We didn't use the 2020 results. We were using ballots from the 2018 election, but we'll be able to report more on that at a different time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Okay, so my question is, it echoes what Representative Hammer was asking about, and that is what you answered also, Mr. Scanlon. Is that on the frequently asked questions section of the Secretary of State's website? So when we get these questions by our constituents, we can send them right to you to get those same answers about our equipment that's used and everything that you just said, basically?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to look at our frequently asked questions on the website. I'm not sure that one is there. It is a question that has been frequently asked of us on the phone, and we have developed kind of a standard response, which we have published. But let me see if we can make that more readily available to you and your constituents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Scanlon. There is a lot of information on the Secretary of State's website. I recommend that committee members spend some time on it. There's a lot of new information since this committee met last year. And if we've got questions about it, we'll be seeing Deputy Scanlon quite often, I suspect, and we'll be able to ask him in the committee format of meetings. Does anybody else have any questions right now? Because if we are all set, I'd like to thank Deputy Scanlon and Secretary Gardner for being with us today. And I want to take a few minutes to talk to committee members about our first meeting, which will be happening a week from now. You should have all received an email notice of the meeting next week at 10 o'clock. You should have also received an email from Paul Smith requesting your preferred email for notices. If you want to keep using your Leggy email, but you have another email you would prefer, or you check more regularly, I would suggest trying to set up an automatic forwarding of some sort. I'm now way out of my league from a technology standpoint, but I know you can do it to make sure that you get those notices. You saw yesterday how we had a hearing notice sent, and within an hour, I think, you had another hearing notice sent that said revised hearing notice. And it is difficult to keep track of what's going on, especially if it's buried in your Leggy email with all the bulk email we get. So committee hearing next week. This committee won the lottery, so to speak, and got the call to have the first public hearing. We will be the first one and the only one occurring next week for various reasons in State House scheduling. It is scheduled for Friday at 10 o'clock. As we get a little more depth with the system, we will probably discuss as a committee moving up the beginning time to 9 o'clock, especially if most people are attending remote. You will be able to attend remote for the meetings. I am planning to physically be at the State House next week. You have the option to do so if you want. I really want to be there to see the setup. Really, the public will not be allowed to be in the building. The building is not open to the public. They have supposedly arranged double committee rooms with adequate spacing and a large screen at the end of the tables that will project something like we're looking at, so that if you are in attendance, you will have the ability to see that screen. We have not gotten any word that you would be allowed to bring your own computer, and there are issues in regards to the access to the format that they're concerned about. So you would not be able to have a computer right now, at least at the table in front of you. So you would be looking at the screen at the end of the room. So for many of you, you're going to find that this format is actually more useful. The clerk will need to do her duties as is normal. I need to tell you, we're sort of still working that out. Veteran members recall the old pink cards and sign-up sheets. It is my understanding that notices will go out, and if members of the public want to testify in regards to a bill, there will be an ability to sign up ahead of time. And chairs will be provided a list of people who want to speak before the meeting. And I expect that the direction will be, if you sign up ahead of time, you're going to be recognized before people who sign up on the day of the hearing. This is apparently a format that the Senate has been using, so we're going to give it a try here in the House. I will report on the setup and try to maybe visually be able to let people who are attending remotely see what the room is set up like. The other issue is going to be that during the meeting, we will need to have a technology person doing what has been going on today, recognizing people who raise their hands, recognizing them to speak, and trying to work it out. The legislative assistants will not be available to run the technology during the meeting. We don't have enough staff to provide the research support that we need in addition to being in every room. I will tell you that one of the reasons I'm going in next week is because I want to do the technology piece of it during the first public hearing so we can see how well it's really working, to see what the feasibility is of having someone do that remotely, because that can be done obviously remotely. I've been doing it here this morning. I have significant concerns that if there's a problem, I would rather be on site to resolve it so that we don't have to cancel any meetings or reschedule anything, because as you heard, we have 50 plus bills. So committee meeting next week at 10 o'clock, you'll be getting a Zoom invitation. We ask that you log on early. I am going to try and start the meeting early. Start the meeting at 10 o'clock. And we have 3 bills. Originally, our public hearing was scheduled for 1 bill. That was SB 2. SB 2 is the bill that has already come out of the Senate. It is amended to deal with issues, as you heard stated, in regards to our community elections and annual meetings that start really in February. I believe some have something scheduled at the end of January. One of the reasons they wanted that dealt with quickly was because public notices needed to happen for those meetings and have already happened. However, there was some discussion that we should deal with this with a public hearing, because to have dealt with this bill right away would have eliminated the ability to have a public hearing on it. So SB2 went to the top of the list for public hearings. That was scheduled for 10 o'clock next Friday. As bills got processed, the offices have to take care to make sure that bills going to a second committee are taken care of. Second committee bills are bills that need to go to finance generally, and they need to be reported out by February 18th out of this committee. So there are two bills on our list that need to go to finance. One is HB 86. That is a recently added bill, and it is relative to voter qualifications and registration procedures. And the other bill that has a fiscal note is 121, which is relative to independent redistricting commissions. So as you know, independent redistricting commissions have had robust public hearings. So I was reluctant to put that on. However, given our attempt to try and manage committee meetings and not have them every day, we're going to be limited to, I think, 2 days a week once committee meetings get going. We've put them all on for next week. I have optimistically scheduled them for an hour each. In the hopes we do not have to take a lunch break, because I'm concerned about the technology doing a break and coming back, both for committee members and the public. But we'll do that if we need to. And once a hearing is noticed, if we're going way over, the committee hearings that follow, as you know, for those of you who have been in person, they're just going to start late, and we'll try to get a handle on that to let people know if we think it is going to go late. You can get the bills by going online to the advanced bill search. Frankly, I find is the easier site, and go to election law bills and look up the bills. I do not suggest printing them out. I will tell you that this is the stack of bills, and this is largely double-sided printed. So my suggestion would be that I'm a big paper person. I want to put them in a notebook and organize them. I'm trying to hold back because we have more bills, I think, than I certainly have seen on election law, and I suspect the most we have ever had. We will not be having an executive session next week. You will notice that the calendar notice says there may be, but I will tell you as chair, we will not be. Because of the last minute nature of the scheduling, the clerk's office was not sure about the executive session, and that language was selected to go in just to be sure we were covered if for some reason we did have an executive session. But given the number of public hearings we now have, I don't think a vote is likely, which means that we will have to have another meeting before February 18th, on or before February 18th. I do not, after our meeting on the 22nd, I do not expect to be scheduling a meeting before February 1st. And I am hoping to know shortly what days of the week we have been given to hold our public hearings. There is an issue of public access and scheduling. And it's my understanding that committees are going to be given particular days of the week. It has also been requested that we schedule bills to go all day because of the number of bills that we have. I know, for like many of you, I sort of multitask and usually have tried to have something else on my calendar on committee hearing days. I'm not sure that's going to be possible as we begin this journey. So with the January calendar probably just being our meeting on the 22nd, you can expect at least one meeting out of this committee before the 18th. And I will tell you that there is not going to be a session, from what I've heard, before the second week in February, because really the first thing we need to do as a body is to deal with second committee bills. Those don't actually have to be voted on by the body until the 25th. And I apologize for that ding. I'm going to have a conversation with IT as to operating the sound off my camera as compared to my computer. My computer is telling me other things are happening. I have no idea what they are. So that's, you know about all I know about these committee meetings. And as soon as I know anything else definitively, I will send it out. I know people are asking about executive sessions and attendance and how that is going to happen. And as soon as I know, I will let you know. But it's my understanding they believe they have committee rooms set up so that some or all members would be able to attend safely. And just to repeat, I will physically be there next Friday. That's the plan, because of my concern over making sure we've got all the moving pieces set up correctly for our meetings. So with that, Representative Lane. You're muted.
Sorry. Operator error. For those who do go into the building for the meetings, will there be a mask requirement?
I am assuming so. Pam, are you online? Is there a mask requirement in the building?
Yes, there's currently the facilities committee directive about masks is still in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Pruitt-Home O'Brien.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair. Do we need to tell people ahead of time that we intend to be there on the 22nd at the meeting? Is there any accommodation that they need to make for that?
I don't believe so, but Pam, you want to answer that? It would be helpful, I am sure.
Yeah, I haven't heard about, final decisions, but that's definitely been among the proposals, that just so we know who to expect, and it would certainly be helpful. And it may be required. I just don't know what the final decision will be.
But we will get that information in the next few days.
Yes, absolutely. They're working on it right now.
I will be there.
Literally right now. Thank you. Representative Terozin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pretty much echoing Representative O'Brien's question. I intend to be there next Friday in person. So I just want to make sure we can get in the building. If we need to notify somebody to even get in, with security, if that will be done by you or somebody else. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any hands. I think I'm looking at the screen correctly. Pam, help me if I'm wrong.
I don't see any hands.
All right. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to conclude this orientation meeting. I want to thank you all for attending. I hope you found it helpful. If there's more information after thinking about this you'd like, let me know, and we'll try to put time in our agenda maybe to address other things as a committee. We have the opportunity to invite guests in to discuss particular issues, like Representative Lane referenced in regards to replacement machines, or you also heard some reference in regards to the audit trial that was done at the archives. I had the opportunity to see that, and you might have questions as to where that might go or what is involved in that. And so just know that those kind of issues we can deal with in addition to the bills. 3 bills next week. And if there's nothing further, I guess I'm going to call an end to this. They're not requiring a roll call to end the meetings, are they, Pam?
No, no.
Thank you. So a big bye is okay.
Thank you. This was
Thank
very
you.
helpful.
All right, and there's a
Thank you.
leave meeting button at the bottom right of your screen.